But you got to do business. I mean, I don't know why you would leave money on the table um, because you're patriotic.
All right, gents, welcome back to another episode 4 of Are We Rolling? And so the question is, are we rolling? And I believe our producer says we are.
Well, I think that we were going to talk about. I made a joke, right, last week
I didn't think
to
it
you
was a joke.
guys on the text.
You're the only one that knew it was a joke.
Well, like I said, there's a little truth to every joke that, when do we think, the Oscars are either going to leave this country or not exist anymore? Um, eh, Making movies and television shows is now so globally and not really as focused as it has been in its history in the United States and Hollywood. And I think we've done a little homework on that. And I think we have some things to talk about things that we've talked about previously, and a lot of people know about runaway production. But the numbers for us are pretty daunting. And if I'm a podcaster and I'm sitting in London right now, I might be saying, who the hell cares about Hollywood as a city or as a place where content is created, right? Or actors live, or the agencies are, or the writers are. I mean, I think it's really moved globally now, and I'm just wondering what else is going to follow it, What do we think is the future?
Well, it's interesting you bring up Hollywood because, it really is, it's the brand of the name Hollywood. And what does that really mean anymore? And it's really funny that this is all coming to fruition now in the fact that film, which we all think of as long form storytelling, is really not even used in Hollywood anymore. So, is the word Hollywood going to go away? And should the word film go away? Because, like, we digitally use digital cameras to record the majority of productions or pictures that are put out these days. Now, obviously, with the culmination of what's happening in AI, we're going from film to digital to AI now storytelling, which is really interesting. So, back to your question, what does Hollywood even mean and where does it
Hmm.
go? I'm going to start you all off with something that I think you all just found out for me just the other day. Did you all know that the MPAA is no longer the MPAA? It is no longer the Motion Picture Association of America. It is the MPA, the Motion Picture Association, because they felt that there was no reason to represent just America. They represent the world now. And I feel like, to your question that you thought was a joke, it's really about the world of content and where has Hollywood gone all over the world. I think people have taken their own brand association of that in their own liking.
Do you think everybody recognizes the MPA?
No, I don't think many people know what the
And
MPA.
who's guidelines? Who's making the guidelines? Why are there rules? You know what I mean?
That's
I
a great
mean,
question.
people are making movies. They're not, some of them are rated, some of them are not rated. You put your own content in. A lot of them are really violent. Some of them are not very violent. I mean, why do you have to
Yeah.
follow somebody's rules?
Kind of going what you said, Jason. I think it's like how much of Hollywood is a brand and then how much of it is a location. And I think we've been trying to pull that apart in the last few years. And I think everybody thought, we kind of get on the other side of the strikes and things would bounce back. And then you see this decentralization and kind of this, it kind of going everywhere, which is obviously there's a lot of good to it. But then yeah, it makes you question, which I think, Todd, is a great question. The place where we celebrate cinema at the peak is the Oscars, and it's been 100, it's almost 100 years, right? And it used to be celebrating American cinema, and now it's a more of a global brand, is what I think you're looking at with Hollywood. And I think you could see this with a lot of industries. You could see it with Wall Street. It used to be a place where you trade. Now you can trade anywhere. It doesn't mean that everything's being traded in Wall Street. Cars were made in Detroit. They aren't made always in, Michigan anymore. Silicon Valley, it used to be that's where all the tech is. Now it doesn't mean that it's a name, it's a brand. It's kind of like, so I think Hollywood's having to bear that brunt of what's left of it, a location to the industry versus the brand of the industry.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that. Great movies are made all over the world. It's never really been centralized to one place that has to make movies, right? Yeah, Hollywood's kind of lost its identity, I think, in that way. And question is where is the next great? We talked about film hubs, right? So where is the next great film hub? Is it the UK? If you go back and we said how many of these films of the last um, Best Picture nominees were American films, a lot of them were co-productions. If you go back and look, it says United States and United Kingdom, or United Kingdom and United States, regardless of where it was actually filmed. So something's going on with that. But we've come close to losing, a major part of the industry. Just in any, if this was any industry, it doesn't even have to be Hollywood. We've lost a lot of this industry in this country has gone out of the country and elsewhere internationally because
Yeah.
it's a better deal.
Let me give you some
Mm.
stats that are really alarming and interesting to what you just said, which is last year alone in 2025, there were 156 big budgeted, as you and I and all of us call studio productions in the world. 35 of them were done in the US. Only 35. And the majority of them were done in Los Angeles. Here's
Hmm.
what's really interesting about Los Angeles. In shooting days alone, from 2021 at the peak, there was 18,560 shooting days. Obviously, we all know how many actual shooting days are on a film, all calculated up to total out the full year in California or in Los Angeles, excuse me. 18,560. 2024 only had 7,760. That is
Mhm.
huge to tell you the exodus of storytelling and of big filmmaking is going outside of LA and going outside of the US. So you
Mhm.
guys are all hitting it on the head. You're absolutely right. Storytelling and filmmaking in the visual medium that we all love and know is now worldwide. And it's because of financing. It's because of what is more economical. How do I actually tell a story for the price that I want to tell it for?
Oh, we made some good films here last year. Marty Supreme was done here, and Sinners was done here, and One Battle After Another, which won Best Picture, was done here. It's just like you said, fewer films are being made here. Mainly for financial reasons. Look, you know. I don't know what to say. When we had the strikes and the unions were saying the studios and the networks are so greedy, I think, in hindsight, it was the unions that became very greedy and they ran the studios and the networks basically out of the country. It's expensive to shoot here. Business
What,
is, but you got to do business. I mean, I don't know why you would leave the money on the table because you're patriotic,
Well,
right?
I mean, it's a great. I mean, if you knew nothing about our business and you just wanted to start making a movie, it's a good exercise to just come at it completely green and go, where would I go? I mean, and that's what you're seeing. I mean, that's just the bottom line of like the table of doing business. If you were going to start up any industry or any business, right? Where would you go?
hmm.
I
So
mean,
the incentives are so attractive in other parts of the world, um, and good for them, that they've been able to lure the business away from this country where we're less incentivized. And in doing so, they have built this industry for themselves in their own countries. And they're seeing the results of that, like Hollywood has seen for years, right?
mhm,
You make the movie here, you employ the people buy the homes, they go to the schools, it rolls over to generation. I mean, that's the business in Los Angeles is Hollywood, right? And we've lost a lot of that business. And other people who've taken advantage of incentives have built their business, and now their business is pretty well situated, you know,
mhm.
pretty stable.
Yeah, but how
Yeah.
do we keep that? How do we keep that culture of our American storytelling heritage alive, though? I mean, you brought up the initial question around the Oscars. Is the Oscars going to be in Hollywood anymore? Is the Oscars Hollywood anymore? I mean, the Oscars were originally, and I feel still are, an American award show, right? I think we talked about this the other day. It is. We have a foreign category, but how many of those films at the Oscars are made in America? And so if you begin to pull more and more outside of the United States, you pull more and more of that cultural of identity of those stories that are truly American. So there's a lot of, big questions around where is this going to? What is it going to morph into? I mean, shit, it's going to be on YouTube here in 2029. It's not even going to be on ABC anymore. So it's not
Right.
even going to be an American, broadcast company. It's going to be a worldwide broadcast. Obviously, it was done worldwide, on ABC, but now it's going to be exclusively on YouTube, which to me just is a head scratcher.
Well, you look at Google, I mean, it's a great point. So the first 100 years, it's a real young industry, if you think about it, in its own terms, is like that's one that ABC hosted the Oscars, which that's why I think, Todd, it's a great question. It's like that's the pinnacle of great cinema as we know it, as we were raised under it, right? The Oscars told you and taught everybody what great cinema was, and that's what the celebration was. But if you look at it, it's like ABC airing the Oscars is like America is watching. YouTube, Google hosting the Oscars, which is coming, says to me the world is watching. And it's like America, Hollywood used to teach what was great cinema, and now I think the world is now, like we're saying, it's completely it's expanded out to an international, art form, and now it's the world, saying, hey, this is what great storytelling is. And I don't think you put that genie back in the bottle, but I think you raise a great question, which is just like, yeah, how do you continue to cultivate the legacy that is and and preserve it and look after it for then what's going to be the next, preparing for the next 100 years? Yes, because it's a global game now.
Yeah, where's our place in the global game?
Yeah.
Well, you've had so many international investment in Hollywood. There's so much money coming in from outside the US into Hollywood media companies so they can control the eyeballs and control where, those messages are being pushed. And now they're obviously being done on foreign soil or outside of the United States. And so, the question really begs, like, what is our identity then? What is the identity of American filmmaking, and how do we then compete? Because you're all right, it's financial. The studios, I feel like, dug themselves a massive hole in trying to figure out how to appease for a mass broad audience that goes worldwide, that all of those ticks in the stock market had to stay high. So you couldn't really find a centralized way to continue making great content in one specific area. You had to continue bringing those numbers up, whether it was finding a cheaper way to do it elsewhere, or whether it was pushing to audiences all around the world, or whether it was bringing the ticket prices up so that you can make that amount of money and keep those margins going. So I feel like they dug that hole, and now they're having to obviously lie in it and figure out what the hell to do to get out of it. And the interesting part is what's going on with technology and how that's going to potentially change, the way that we either shrink the timelines or the amount of money it costs to make these pictures.
Look, it's great that it's more international. People have great stories to tell all over the world and great platforms in which to tell them. But I mean, it just begs the question again, where is Hollywood's place in all this? You know what I mean? I mean, if there's, I mean, the people who are making the jobs to send the work overseas, how long before their jobs go overseas too?
It's a good point.
I mean, why is it London, Hollywood?
Yeah.
Maybe London is Hollywood.
Right now,
I
it's,
mean,
what was it, number one?
who's to
Yeah.
say, they're and I haven't really done a deep dive on agencies and things like that, but I mean, there's great writers and great performers all over the world. And so I think that the audiences benefit from having these universal stories told. But like you said, I mean, it's not going back in the bottle, right? So
Hmm.
where do we think it's going to go from here?
Well, I hate to give ourselves a plug, but it kind of goes into what we're trying to do inside of Provisions, which is create, this homegrown network of great stories that cultivates right here in the middle of America. How do we tell these great stories of hope and resilience and really, find a touching way to collect an audience that lives right here at home? And I think is thirsting for that type of opportunity to feed off of that content. But I really think what we're doing is important to all of what we're talking about, to instill and to keep that legacy of Hollywood here in America.
Yeah, maybe it is up to the independent filmmakers to carve out your own stories and do your with your own distribution. It can go out theatrically, it can go out worldwide, but to keep your work here at home, if you can. And to do that, you have to stop relying on the studios and the networks. You have to rely on yourself and your own creative content. And if it sells.
Yeah.
I guess it's always been like that.
Well, you make me think about like just asking the question of London, or it used to be that it was just I think about theater. The London audience was always a lot different in when you looked at like the theater versus like New York or Broadway. And Broadway always had a more of a spectacle. There was more of a you know, intellectual audience that was, appreciated the classics in London. At least, I went to school out there. To me, that's what I always looked at was the audience. And we kind of get that with international sales, right? With our movies, it's like certain things don't sell, or you're always looking at the audience. To me, I'm kind of wondering where we're going, how much of that starts to kind of lay an even playing ground where the audience is now internationally, like the way that we used to look at it domestically here in the States, actually starts to be the same type of audience, looking for the same type of story because we're now learning and developing as an audience here domestically and internationally. How much does that start to merge? Because really, at the end of the day, when you get into distribution or your movie or independence, anytime we get a project, what's the first thing you ask? What's the audience for this, right? Like it's learning the story, and if that can start to merge, maybe there's a greater opportunity where things that wouldn't necessarily use to sell internationally, we start to learn like actually there's an audience for this.
It's a good point. And, I feel like, I feel like companies, mid majors, and possibly even us are going to figure out the silo effect, like continuously going after one specific audience, as you said, or one genre. Like we talked about Blumhouse in the past. Like, why hasn't
Hmm.
Blumhouse become their own silo of distribution? Like, you know what you're getting when you're watching a Blumhouse show. So I don't understand why they don't just go after that constantly and cut out the middleman. Quit going through their distributor and become their own distributor. And I really think that is going to be the impetus by which we're moving, because you talked about independent film, and here's another stat for you. You all know that Los Angeles went from 350 million to 700 million in their tax credits
Hmm.
give out in LA. 56% of that went to independent films in Los Angeles. So that's really interesting to see that there is a big influx of independent film. And I feel like as we begin to get more and more opportunities to recognize the really great creativity that these storytellers have to tell, and not having to go through an executive or a studio that's molding it into the shape of what they think it is, and finding the path by which they get to tell their story the way they want to tell it, that's going to start to generate more independent platforms of people making films and telling stories on their own. And hopefully it'll be, like I said, it'll be the wild wild west of great stories again, if you will, instead of having to go down the path of, if you want distribution, there's these seven titles you have to go to get it.
If the dollar's trading with the Canadian dollar at 70 cents on the dollar, you've got a $10 million movie. Why don't you just go to Canada and make it for seven?
Yeah, but it's also tougher to take that crew or find that crew over there. I think that independent film,
You can
well,
go to Vancouver or Toronto and get a great crew.
so then
Great.
tell me this, Todd. I understand, but tell me this: do a lot of independent filmmakers who are not as experienced as some of the Hollywood, elite or more experienced folks, do they want to be creating with people that they know who to create with, they have a feeling and an emotion and a respect around to be able to push that through? Is that more of a difference maker than to actually take it out of the United States for a dollar?
I think if you get your movie made, you go where you can get your movie made. You
Yeah,
give up your left arm to go get your movie made. And that's 3 million reasons why to do it.
you're right.
They
Exchange
can't
rate
compete against that.
unbelievable.
Just
So
can't do it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying I have the answer for it. I'm just saying that's here it is. This is what the dollar is trading at right now. So I mean, what are you gonna do? What do you do? Oh, I only have 7 million. Well, your budget's 10. I'm going to Toronto. called Butch. You know,
Oscar.
that's always been like that. That Canadian thing has always been like that. Back from when they, but for years and years and years, we've always been, dealing with the Canadian dollar. It's and people that's how they launched. I mean, they have a great production hub in Canada, but what we're talking about is where our place is, right? And goes back to what's the relevance of an award show? Um, and I'm not saying award shows are so great or anything. I'm just saying that I don't know. I don't know. Do you think the Oscars would ever go on the road?
I thought it's a great question. I mean, what does it take for it to go on the road? That like, what does it take to have the Oscars in London? To your point, number one production hub right now, doing the most, has the best incentive, everything you're talking about. What takes it and moves it globally, and how long? If it's all of a sudden interesting. I mean, as we're throwing out a ton of numbers, I was looking at this when you asked it, just to see what the viewership was, and I think it was like last year's Oscars were like 71 million viewed it live, but 181 million interacted with it online. So you start to take the whole Google,
And
YouTube.
what does that mean, by the way?
So like you start to air it on YouTube. Now, how many of the influencers, the channels, the plugins, the red carpets, the interactions, um, the different, behind the scenes cameras are you going to get into when you just take one move like that? And I look at this as like pro sports as well, right? Like it sounds weird, but like you look at the NFL, they're taking games over to London and they're now going to take them to Paris. And what does it take to actually start? Because to me, that's what the Oscars are, right? That's just, you're saying you can do production anywhere, right? Like, and then, but it's actually when that award show happens that there's this kind of like coming together to celebrate film. And when that moves, that shows you that it's somewhere else. And that to me is like taking, maybe too far into the sports analogy, but like the NBA, there's the one thing to like all of a sudden start drafting international players, which we saw like as the game starts to adapt and it starts to become a global game, they start coming over here. But then when you start moving the games overseas as well, that's when you start seeing the move. And that's what to me is your questions kind of
Yeah,
about.
Bob.
I gotta interrupt with the stat is 17.8 million, not 71 million. An even bigger differential between the amount who actually tuned in for the live broadcast and the 181 million on social media.
That's really interesting. That's a lot of people.
It felt wrong when I said 71 million. I'm thinking that's like, but yeah, it's true. That's what, so Todd, to answer your question, that's the interaction online, right? That's all the different elements that you see on the different platforms. So I think just moving it over to YouTube, like you can see it. And that was a big wake up call, right? When we saw the viewership. I mean, I see it. I have young kids, like they're not turning on their shows, they're turning on YouTube, and that's just where it's headed.
It is, but I hate to get into this debate, but I don't find YouTube and social media healthy. Like to me, it's all these short form pieces of content, and it's just hitting the dopamine release over and over again. And it's like, no, turn it off, sit down and watch a long form story. This is more that emulates life than what you will have on these short form content pieces on YouTube. So
That's
Well,
not what
it's
YouTube is all about,
it's
though.
not short form though.
As a network, just like DirecTV, you order your YouTube network and you get all the channels and you get ABC and CBS and NBC.
but
And
that's
it's just like
because
Amazon airing the football games. You're just going to go to YouTube and go to YouTube TV and you're going to see the Oscars. I'm not going to be seeing the Stokes twins with my Oscar broadcast. Maybe in a commercial, but I'm not going to be seeing my kids' content of all this stuff that you're talking about, Jason. I think that, you know, when I go to somebody's house and their platform is YouTube TV, I don't really know the difference.
two separate things to me. YouTube TV is a platform broadcast that broadcasts live television. YouTube is a social media account that you can put your videos on. Frank, you are right. You do have long form content on there. You do.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
But
not
the
what my kids are watching.
majority of it is short form content.
Well,
The
I would,
majority.
they're shorts, but I would disagree. You like the stuff that I watch, my kids watch it. There's no different than Survivor. You got Mr. Beast, a billionaire,
Yeah.
who's got, and I mean, this is just reality show TV. This is Mark Rober, like your kids, like these are full television shows that people are, they have their full channels, they have their, and how much is Google making, daily on the content that's being uploaded to it? I mean, I don't see that train stopping between the ads and so I think that's actually a bigger juggernaut than what they've just dabbled with just going into cable, as you say, Todd, like the YouTube TV, which they're now going to move certain channels onto that as well. So it's gonna, like, I do think that's actually where it's headed.
That's where the majority of the money is in Google. So I wouldn't bet against it if I would, obviously they're pulling the Oscars, they're pulling everything else over to them.
I mean, it's not like with the NBA Finals who were on Amazon Prime, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's its own analogy. I mean, if the Oscars and cinema used to be what we would relate to going to the mall, now cinema's going into Amazon. It's going to be and how do we adapt that art form? I mean, I don't think cinema's changing in any way. I think it still stays. It's just, to your point, going back to the audience and consumption and
It's
how
all
you're,
the same stuff, man. They get their advertisers, they sell the airtime, the advertisers pay the money goes into the coffers, that generates the content and the money, and they just have tons and tons of content that people are pumping money into. And it's like you said, once you hit X million views, somebody starts to pay you for it. When your kid's got uh, almost 2 million views on something, you know, you should take notice of that, and advertisers probably do. I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about with all this, but it seems to be very conventional,
Well, you
you
do know what
know.
you're talking about because we didn't bring this up in this podcast, but we should. But with Obsession and Backrooms, which were two YouTubers that now have broken themselves into Hollywood, because now you've got these two creators that now have over $100 million in sales. So, and they did it like Backrooms. The studios went to the Backrooms creator, all right, and said, all right, you've got this following that's over 100 million people. We know you're going to sell X tickets, right? So they gave him $10 million and a cast list to actually go and make a decent indie film. But on the Obsession side, this was a YouTuber that decided to put up his own $1 million and make a movie that went out and did 117 million in the first 2 weekends. So you've got some really interesting marketing numbers that are coming through on what YouTubers, if you will, or what social media influencers are doing that's changing the basis by which Hollywood is recognizing how to produce and to distribute content.
You said they broke into Hollywood.
They did. They broke in, buddy.
What is Hollywood? Isn't
There
that our
you
yeah.
question today?
Went even
They broke
deeper.
into the entertainment business.
go.
You
It
know?
changes by the minute.
Yeah.
Oh,
Look, people coming up that are younger than we are, and things like that. I mean, they have, you know, I guess loyalty is the wrong word, but I mean, they don't have a concept of Hollywood, a lot of them, and what is traditionally associated with, like you said, Hollywood. They're breaking into the entertainment industry. And the entertainment industry is just a global market. And it's much more a global market than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Um,
Yeah. I mean, to simplify it, what I hear when you say that is it's who's paying for it, right? You mean you gave two cases, and one is privately paid for and one is corporately paid for, and that's the break into Hollywood. That's the difference. Like, is a corporation commercially paying for something, or is something privately being paid for? And I think we make it into independent and Hollywood. At the end of the day, who's paying for it? That's really all you got to ask, because it comes down to the money, and that's usually who controls it. And when you feel like you're out of control, it's because you don't have the ability to pay for it. And what you're trying to work out is ultimately, at the end of the day, an audience that actually pays you for making it. And either a corporation's going to tell you that you have something, or an individual, someone private's going to. And that is the entertainment industry as we know it.
Mr. Beast is shooting in the United States because there's crew
Okay.
right here from Louisiana on his show.
That's
well,
right.
no, he's been in Dubai the last 2 years on his big show for Amazon, by the way. He's been outside the United States. But you're right. He does shoot in North Carolina, the majority of his YouTube stuff. 100% he does. And you're right. He's a massive juggernaut of a market trend that is taken off. And my kids do watch it, by the way. I actually watch it. I like the Beast Games. I thought it was fun.
So where's it all going? Taylor Sheridan's got a massive footprint here in the United States, which is great. He employs a lot of people. He puts out A+ content. Um, some about him not really being concerned about award shows, but more just about writing what he wants to write and producing what he wants to produce. And it's good that so many people are in touch with that. Uh, so he's one of the big saviors here in this country right now. And look, we do still make a lot of movies and TV shows here, uh, but like you said, not near as many as we used to. Some of it's the studios and the networks aren't creating as much content, and a majority of it is product that's moving elsewhere to be made outside of the country.
I think Taylor Sheridan knows his audience, and he's continuously giving the audience the same thing in a different format, in a different form over and over again. And so that's what he's mastered. And that's how, I don't know how the hell he puts on, what does he have, 10 shows going at one time? I mean, how does the man sleep? I don't get it, but he's doing it. And it works. He's found that audience and he's targeted them and he's going to continue, pumping and feeding that mill until it runs dry.
Yeah.
And good for him, man. I hope he continues to do it. And I hope we find more American filmmakers that will obviously do that and do that at home because he has stated he wants to stay home and do that. And so that's really, I think, the resilience that this Hollywood needs to continue telling these cultural stories and to continue bolstering the industry here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point of preserving. I mean, he's got the Americana, and he's doing it in Texas, and I mean, that's a huge audience.
So did we actually answer the question? You know, the
Are
original
the
question,
are the Oscars leaving Hollywood?
are the, are
Is
the
that the
Oscars
question?
leaving Hollywood?
Over or under, how many years? To where they're hosted in
Well, I mean,
West End.
Three.
Sundance is hitting the road, right? Staying in the country for the moment, but going to a new venue, right?
Colorado.
Mhm.
Yep.
Not
Well, I
that far.
mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think the markets are changing. I mean, I think Cannes shows you that. I don't think that's a direct parallel because I mean, talking to the friends that I know, it's like that whole model of making an independent film and selling it at a festival is kind of set in sail, you know. Um, and then you see, Hollywood was, or the U.S. movies are not really present at Cannes, right? That so that's a change in the market, if you will. That's the actual market. Toronto, Cannes, all this stuff. So I don't know. The correlation there is a little different. I mean, I think hosting the Oscars, I I, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think there could definitely be a day where they move it um, and you could see it somewhere else.
I think these film festivals are more or less becoming more of a marketing opportunity versus a sales opportunity. My film was at Cannes, and if you build the marketing opportunity around that, you get the buzz that kind of helps you build an audience or build out a potential sale down the road. Same thing with Toronto, same thing with Sundance. Because I agree with you, I haven't been hearing much about sales at any of these places other than the big ones that, launch off. Oh, so and so was bought for 25 million. Well, that was the one film of the 400 that were shown at that festival. And out of those 400, 20,000 submitted in that year. So it's like there's just those few and far between that make it in the festival market. So I feel like that's becoming more and more a marketing run. And so figuring out a distribution plan, which is what we've been working on and we have is so important nowadays, really understanding like what is your plan once you're done with the film? It's not to go to a festival market to sell it because that is really not there anymore. How are you going to generate an audience and how is that audience? How do I get those 10,000 people to give me $100 or that 100,000 people to give me $10 so that I can begin to obviously monetize on what I'm creating so that I can build a career out of it. And that's really, I think, the case that needs to be made for hopefully our, what's left over of Hollywood and what we can do as an independent film market and really bolster the opportunities to continue telling stories right here in the United States without having to go and use the foreign exchange rate to, make it economically feasible. How do you sell it? If I can make more money knowing I can sell a product, keeping it in one place than it is for me to go elsewhere to go do it, I'm going to stay here every single time, right? So figuring out what that distribution model looks like is the most important thing. And I applaud you, Frank, for doing such a great job with that, with our partnership here at Provisions Films, and we really are now taking advantage of that right now as we build our slate out. So hopefully others will follow suit.
Yeah, no, it's you got to control your own destiny. I agree, you know. It's kind of here you got to we're gonna have to do it because it's all I mean, just the fact that you come back to like if our industry's turning into a brand, that name is turning into a brand, it's like yeah, it gives you the understanding that you have the power to control your own destiny.
Agreed.
You have to find the You have to have the content. You just have to have it. You can't just have a screenplay. You got to have a good screenplay. You got to have something that people want to see. I mean, for the most part, I guess, like we've said in the episode one, there's a lot of shitty movies out there that get made, right? So, control it yourself.
The story is still the most important element, and a great story will get a great audience every single time. On that note, should we wrap this up? I think we somewhat answered the question around, is the Oscars going to stay in Hollywood?
Todd has to officially he asked the question. You got to answer it. Is it going to
Yeah.
move?
Is it going to move?
The Oscars, I think it would disappear before it moves.
Huh.
They have their award shows in London. I mean, I don't know why, it's already an international award show. I mean, I guess you could say, well, why do we have to go to LA every year for this show? Why don't we have it somewhere else?
Good point. So maybe it's the Golden Globes,
I
foreign
mean,
press.
yeah, I mean, Hollywood Foreign Press, it goes back again. Oh, there was very little representation of US films at Cannes. Who cares?
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily US representation, it was studio representation. There was zero studios at
Who
Cannes.
cares?
Yeah, but who cares? All right, well, my over-under, I'll leave it at this. My over-under is that in 3 years, it will either be in another place outside of Hollywood or it will no longer be there. 3 years.
Anybody seen a good movie lately?
Yes, I saw The Sheep Detectives the other night with my daughters, and it was fantastic.
Wanted to see that.
It was really good. I really enjoyed it. So,
I saw Michael. Thought it
oh,
was great. It's a bit of a softball, no doubt about it, but it's a lot of fun. And my son, this was his third time seeing it. The kids love it.
whoa.
And it was great to go in and listen to the music. And again, coming from such a prolific uh, director, I was surprised it was so much of a softball, but that's okay. Go in and have a good time and enjoy it and leave. That's all right. I thought it was really, really well done. And I thought that Coleman Domingo, who played his father, was great.
Hmm.
Really good. And his nephew, Jafar Jackson, I believe is his name, was also did a great job playing Michael. They just didn't go there. You know what I mean? They just didn't go there with all the controversy that surrounds him. So whether it be with drugs or with kids or whatever, they only reported the good things and you know did a great job.
Frank, have you had any time to watch any movies over these holidays?
I was gonna say I was gonna out myself and say I haven't watched anything great because I took my kids to YouTube Creator Camp this last week in Austin. So talk about where the generation's going, which was fascinating to watch them every day come back knowing more about how to be a YouTuber. Um, and they learned stop motion, which is pretty fascinating. But no, we did. We actually took the kids because we were obviously all packed in a van headed to Austin. We saw Toy Story 5, which was a just unbelievably great movie. I mean, just tears. Like there's not an adult that doesn't walk out of there saying that's just a fantastic movie. Did you guys see that?
No, I'm hoping to go this Friday with the kids. So I'm
No,
gonna.
it's so good. Yeah, I don't know how. I don't think there's a. I mean, they're supposed to get not as good once you get over 3 in sequels, right? I mean,
Doing
yeah,
better and better.
yeah, they are. So hats off to them.
Absolutely. All right, guys, let's wrap this up. Good talking to you all as always. Look forward to the next episode. And that's a wrap. We're out.